You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get the last word.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. This is July the 15th, 2019. With you today is myself, Carl. And as always, Stevie Nick.
We're back for another summer edition.
We are here. I almost forgot the year. I almost forgot what I say in between my name and your name. It's going to be a good show.
Well, that's because we've been so deep in the history that you just get lost in time. You don't know what year it is.
Yeah, we're bringing back another edition, Triple H, our hardcore hockey history, or some combination of those three words.
Can we would we be allowed to use that Motorola song, that Motorhead song that Triple H uses as entry music, as our theme music for this segment?
I mean, we could reach out to Triple H's people, or Motorola, or Motorhead. Any of the three.
Or I could just do it.
Okay. Do you know it?
Time to play the game. That's all I know. And then it's a lot of rock metal music.
I like it. Well, when we get there, it's your time to shine.
Okay.
We've got that. We've got some news. I'd say some actual news. We've got some news that's not actual news. We'll touch on all of it today because it's the summer. We're going to be talking about expanding the NHL. So we're looking at NHL expansion drafts this week, which is good. You know, it's fitting, Nick.
It is, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it's fitting for me. The NHL is finding a new home, and I'm finding a new home. I moved this week.
It's very exciting, Carl.
This is... Nick now gets to look at boxes behind me, just everywhere.
Listeners can't see this, but your place is a mess right now.
It's a disaster, yeah. I have nothing left to eat off of. I went from the highs of like Stampede and all the fast food and fried food right across the street to now just sadness, hunger, and waiting to move.
But you'll have some more space soon, right?
Yeah, and I think I have a little bit of extra calories to burn off after Stampede.
Well, there you go.
So it was good. We talked about it last week. I won't spend too much time. Probably the highlight for me, highlight food. I did get the Flaming Cheeto corn dog. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Other good food, the deep fried peanut butter and jam sandwich.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did it on a kebab. They quarter it, and in the middle between each quarter is a deep fried peanut butter cup.
Any stomach aches or uncomfortable evenings that you have to report?
No, actually, which is probably should be more concerning than all of this. The fact that I just took it like a champ the entire time is a real... I'm reconsidering things.
Your body was just like, yeah, I could take it.
Yeah. What else you got?
It's Alberta, right? Throw in a glass of gasoline with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, that was good. We're going to look at expanding the NHL today and all the expansions. Not all the expansions. We'll get to that. We'll get to what's happening. Before any of that, though, Park Power and parkpower.ca is a place that you should go to check out your needs for energy and utilities in Alberta. Parkpower.ca is a fantastic spot. And part of it that's great is as part of moving, Nick, I did head to parkpower.ca. And what's great is when you go there and you fill it out, right on the website, you pick the charity you want to support. And they've got about 10 different options for you there. And so you can support all matter of things in Alberta with your utility bill, which, instead of supporting a big company, support a charity. That's a great thing to do. So parkpower.ca, head over there and do that. Jordan Binnington won a Stanley Cup. Now he's the proud owner of a brand new contract.
What do you think? Do you like it? I guess
yeah,
what it is.
I love it. It's 2 years, $4.4 million per season. I think that's fine. That's about what you can expect from a guy who hasn't done it, hasn't done it for a while, hasn't done it for a long time, but did well for himself this season. Showed what he could be. It's fairly prove it, but also with a little bit of just be good.
I agree. I think it's a great deal for what he came in and did this year. It's a like you said, it's a good prove it deal. Go out there, show us you can do it again, and maybe you can get a bigger one next time. Goalies are weird though. Like you can never predict how well they're going to do.
And they're criminally underpaid compared to the rest of the league.
Except when they aren't, and then the contract, and then everyone's like, "This guy's way overpaid. It's way too much for a goalie."
Who are you thinking of?
Like Carey Price, for example. Do you think he's overpaid?
Probably, but no, I don't. Yeah, I do.
What about
Carey Price? Yeah.
What about how do you feel about Bobrovsky?
For a goalie actually making it to free agency, that's about what one should expect. That's what I think. No goalie ever makes it to free agency, and so when one does, it's like, well, I'm going to pay whatever it takes.
Sure enough. And then after those guys, it's a pretty steep drop off. Like you got Lundqvist making 8.5, and then you got Fleury making 7, and Rask making 7.
Yeah, it's literally the fact that there are 5 goalies making 7 or more is insane to me.
It's pretty crazy when you look at it all in one go like that, especially considering how important that role is on your team. But then you think about no goalie is, consistent for $10 million a year times 8 years. I think it's hard to predict that consistency.
So why aren't we seeing? I guess these goalies are picking term over annual worth. But if they think they're good enough, and maybe they don't, I'm not gonna dive too deep into their heads. But start signing these 2-year $4.4 million deal. Because sure, if Binnington wanted a 6-year deal, he would have been making $3 million with that kind of spread.
Mm-hmm.
But find something smaller.
I think the other side of it too is that goalies generally break into the league at a little bit of an older age than players. My
house is literally falling apart. I better move quickly.
I'm not sure if the mics picked that. I assume they did because I heard that, but
if you heard it, they heard it. Yeah.
Is everything okay? Are your feet okay?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, good. So anyways, I don't remember what I was talking about anymore.
Goalies break into the league.
Goalies at an older age, right?
Yeah.
On average, I don't know. I don't have the stats in front of me. If I had to guess off the top of my head, 4-5 years older than players.
Yeah, because how many 18-year-old goalies do we see? Marc-Andre Fleury came in at 18, Luongo, Carey Price. That's very, very rare.
Right. So they have fewer opportunities to get a raise because there's fewer times that their contract is up. So, you might have, how old is Sebastian Aho right now? 24 or something?
Yeah, 22.
22. His contract's going to be up at 27. So he'll get to re-up again there. A lot of goalies miss that 22 contract.
Yeah. And so they're only signing that one restricted deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think maybe this will be a trend going forward with that Jordan Binnington is doing shorter term. And that gives you a chance to then, prove yourself and go higher next time.
I mean, and it's a very different situation, but Robin Lehner is currently 27. He just signed a 1-year, $5 million deal. Also taking a shorter term, thinking, I'm good. I just showed what I can do. If I'm going to make $5 million this year, I can go out and try to do that. But again, Robin Lehner just about won the Vezina. I think should have won the Vezina, and is only making $5 million this season.
Yeah. I mean, the other way to look at it too is, You look at the position and the lack of consistency in it. If you can get the long-term guaranteed money, it's safe. It's a safe bet. So why not?
Yeah. I do. There's that whole side of, is it the teams not wanting to lock a guy up long term, or is it the players wanting to, take the prove it contracts? Because it definitely, we don't see a ton of it especially on free agent deals, right? Like,
Yeah.
the fact that Bobrovsky got what he did, right? 8 or 7 times 10. It's impossible everywhere else.
Yeah. Agreed.
But goalie contracts are something I will never figure out. And yet, Binnington, pretty good. He'll be the 21st highest paid goalie this year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And we'll get a sense probably around Christmas time whether or not it's a really good deal or it's like a like wipe the sweat from your brow kind of deal, or like, oh, thank God we didn't go like 7x6 or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan Binnington 21st, 22nd, Jake Allen. So there you go, St. Louis Blues. You got 21 and 22 on lockdown.
Yeah, they don't have too much locked up in their goalies. They're okay.
Yeah, we got a couple other contracts happening this week. Ryan Dzingel, former Columbus Blue Jacket, former Ottawa Senator, current Carolina Hurricane. 2 years, 3.375. What do you think?
It was a great deal for Dzingel. I was surprised he ended up in Carolina. That came out of the blue for me. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it was good to see Carolina go out and add some more pieces to that team. I like that.
And I think, like, for Dzingel, that's a great deal for what he can bring to the table.
Yeah,
I have zero problems with this contract.
Yeah, and it's shorter, but again, good for him. On the flip side, Micheal Ferland signed a deal that, I don't know. So he's making, I guess let's play this game. Who would you rather? Just like equal contracts. Who would you rather? Micheal Ferland or Ryan Dzingel?
I think Ryan Dzingel.
Yeah, it's so let's look at the tape. Last year, Micheal Ferland started fantastically, right? Cannot deny the fact that he had a great start to last season. Finished with 17 goals, 23 assists, 40 points. Ryan Dzingel, 26 goals, 30 assists, 56 points. So Dzingel performed better. Micheal Ferland started real hot, tailed off at the end. I too would rather Dzingel, but Vancouver Canucks disagree. They signed Micheal Ferland to a 4-year, $3.5 million contract.
It's the worst contract.
It's the worst contract for the worst player.
Want to know why?
Yeah, I do.
They gave him a no move clause, which means it's a forced expansion protection.
Oh my goodness.
Whereas Dzingel has no trade protection, so they can either move him at the deadline, not this coming season, next season, or this coming season, or they could just decide not to protect him. Oh no, wait, that doesn't work. Never mind.
Okay, what?
Well, they don't have to protect him, right? Because his contract's up at the end of next year anyways.
Right, yeah.
So,
but they also don't have to do that. Like, they don't have to worry about it. He's gone.
Exactly.
The Vancouver Canucks now have to protect Micheal Ferland.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the Canucks strategy is right now. Like, are they rebuilding? Are they not rebuilding? Do they think they're in a good enough spot to make a push for the playoffs? Their actions tell me yes.
Their actions definitely tell me yes, and like strongly yes. Because they've gone out. They spent $30 million, $6 per year on Tyler Myers, $2 per season on Jordy Ben, $3.5 on Micheal Ferland. They traded for JT Miller. I think those are their additions. Those are 4 strong like dollar amounts locked up there.
Yeah, and I think they're like for the Canucks, they're good additions too, but it doesn't erase some of the additions they've made in previous years.
Well, here's all for sure, right? You still have, Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle at $3 million each. Not good. You still got Louis Eriksson at $6 million. Here's the thing. Brock Besser, no contract. They're sitting at $5 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. They're not only are they paying Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle $3 million cap hit each, there's the old Roberto Luongo cap hit. So they've got $9 million tied up in those three.
Yeah. Plus there's one you're forgetting too. There's the $6 million in Louis Eriksson.
So $15 million for a very bad. If you just include Luongo as like a fourth member of a line, a Louis Eriksson, Antoine Roussel, Jay Beagle line for $15 million is atrocious.
It's terrible. They have to do something. Can you trade recapture cap hit?
Ooh. I don't think so. Because you can't, once you... no, I wouldn't think so.
You probably can't. Like, you can't trade a buyout cap hit, right?
No, you would, you can trade them and then have the other team buy them out. But it's literally a penalty for what you benefited from for those years.
Yeah.
So no, you can't. I want them to be. I bet that'd be fun.
Right.
Especially since Colorado's got the cap hit to take that on. We'll take the $3 million in Luongo for a second?
Probably.
If Patrick Marleau's cap hit is worth a first. Roberto Luongo's 3 years of Roberto Luongo, that's a first. We'll do it. Done deal. Trade signed.
And based on their actions of this offseason, the Canucks aren't anticipating needing that first. Or it'll be a very low first
according to them, yeah. Which is, I don't get it. The Pacific is still not that great of a division. Right? The Ducks are going to get worse. The Flames aren't going to be the team that they were this year. The Sharks are still good, but they're not getting better, right? They lost Pavelski. Mm-hmm. Coyotes, they'll be better probably than they were this year. They're going to add an expansion draft team in a couple seasons. I don't know.
So the Canucks have made some additions, some positive additions. Do you think shedding one or more of Eriksson or Beagle or Roussel is addition by subtraction?
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're going to have to get rid of one of them.
They've got 3 years left for all three of them. And I don't see why no one's clamoring to take those on.
Well, they also, all three of them all have some form of trade protection.
Of course they do. What is...
So, not only do you have to find a team that will take them, you have to find a team that they will also want to go to.
Of course. Good news is Antoine Roussel can only block it to half the league. So there's that.
I wonder which half he's going to want to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. Well, that's interesting. Good on you, Canucks.
Yeah. Jim Benning's going to have some work to do.
Yeah. There was also a trade this week. Mr. Alex Nylander was dealt from Buffalo to Chicago for Jokiharju. And that was an interesting trade for me because I was big on Jokiharju. I thought he was good. Alex Nylander, I'm like, yeah, you've tried enough. I was kind of like, I also was ready to move on from Alex Nylander.
Yeah, I think it's been a couple of years now that it's like, guys, either play him in the league or don't. Let's make up our minds here.
Yeah.
But doesn't it kind of feel like the Dylan Strome trade again, where, it might seem like a last-ditch effort and then he's going to magically turn into this amazing hockey player?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but that absolutely is what it feels like to me. Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. I like the addition of Jokiharju for Buffalo. I think they're going to be interesting.
Yeah, Buffalo's, especially with the continued talk of them, like they seem to want to trade Ristolainen. How much they want to is yet to be seen. But, Jokiharju can step in and take a role if Ristolainen ends up moving.
Ristolainen's just not that good. I don't like. How do they not see that?
Yeah, and, I feel, and I could be wrong. I personally think the pendulum has now swung too far the other way on public opinion on Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah, you think it's too harsh on him now?
Yeah. I think he is certainly, like, the way that you hear people talking about him, like, he's not even an NHL defenseman.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily true. I think he's an NHL defenseman. I don't know if he's ever going to live up to his draft position as a top 10 draft pick.
Fun fact, him and Alex Nylander both drafted 8th overall by Buffalo.
So they're not batting very well at that position.
Just never. They're like, please someone pass us in the draft so we don't have to pick 8th.
Yeah, I think he's a fine, like, mid or bottom pairing guy. He's not terrible, but he's not that, number one defenseman that he was initially supposed to be.
No. Do you know who else the Buffalo Sabres? Here's a collection. Here are Buffalo Sabres 8th overall draft picks.
Okay, let's hear it.
2017, Casey Middlestat.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
Another one that, I don't know which. I was gonna say I don't know which one of him or Nylander. I'd obviously rather Middlestat than Alex Nylander. Let's not go.
Is he still in their system? Yeah, he is, right?
Yeah. And then that's really it. It was just Casey Middlestat. It's been a long time before that. Apparently, they just only picked 8th in the 2010s. That was their big spot. So,
all right. Well, Middlestat's not a bad pick.
I just wanted to think of Casey Middlestat. He's someone that everyone, like Sabres fans, were very excited about, and it's not something that I'd be excited about. He's fine, and he'll be good, but...
Well, he took what year was that they drafted him?
2017.
Yeah. People get really excited when players are drafted, and then they realize they need to develop a couple of years, and they kind of lose steam.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Middlestat. He was talked about a lot when he was drafted, and then everybody forgot about him.
Well, and he had, like, you get drafted, you have a fantastic World Junior, everyone is all about you.
Yeah.
Right? And then they actually see you play against NHLers and not 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and apparently it's harder. Who knew?
Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thought, yeah. There we go. Alex has traded William, also in the news today. Changed his jersey number. He is now Alex William Nylander, number 88 of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I don't care. From 29 to 88, I mean, like, this is how you know it's the off season, because I literally got a push notification on my phone about this today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal for everyone who owns a William Nylander jersey.
True, which is something I hadn't even considered.
Like, for those people, it matters. I mean, it doesn't matter enough to have a push notification. Because where do you think Alex Nylander slots William Nylander? I don't even care. They're the same person. Where do you think that Nylander, number 88, slots in jersey sales?
Fourth, maybe fifth.
No.
Do you have the stat?
Well, here's the thing. So they only give you like the top 10.
Okay. Per team?
Or no, I've got the top 8. And he's not on it.
Come on. He's not in the top 8 of jersey sales for Toronto?
No, for the league.
Oh, for the league.
For sure, for the team he has to be, but for the league.
Oh, for the league. Oh, probably not even top 30.
Yeah, like this is what I'm talking about. We're talking about a guy who literally, like, yes, he's probably, top 8 on the Leafs, sure. But, like, how many, so you got top 8, you probably got, 1,000 Nylander jerseys in the arena any given night?
I have no idea I have no idea. There's 20,000 people in the arena, right?
Yeah. A bunch of them got their Matthews jerseys, their Marner jerseys.
Tavares.
They've got their Sundins.
Yeah. Gilmore's.
Yeah. And then, like, just let everyone who's got the Nylander show up at the team store and get new numbers. And then we don't have to care about this because this is stupid.
But they are doing that.
Good.
You know that, right? Like, Nylander's literally paying for them all to do it.
Oh, he himself is?
Yeah. He's actually footing the bill for anyone who wants to go and get their nameplate redone. He'll pay for them all.
Wow. I mean, the team should do it. They should not maybe making William Nylander pay for it.
They're making him pay for holding out. They're like, no, you wanted all this money.
Yeah, you want that signing bonus? Here. We're getting that money. Because that's an interesting... This is it. Okay, hear me out on this one. William Nylander sits out. William Nylander gets a bunch of money. The Leafs make some concessions. Part of the deal is, William, you have to change your number after the season. So that everyone has to buy new jerseys, but you pay for it. That seems like cap circumvention, does it not? Like, he's literally going to be paying the team money. I guess it's reverse circumvention. I don't know what it is, but it seems fishy.
I mean, they're not getting any cap relief from it.
That's why it's reverse. I don't know why they would do it. At this point in time, I have zero idea why the Leafs would be on this deal, but for some reason they are.
I mean, that would just be petty revenge if that's the case. Because in the MLSC machine, like, this payment for nameplate replacement is nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's more of a, if Nylander probably realizes he's not the most popular guy after what went down last year.
Yeah.
So, how can I change some of those feelings to more positive ones? I'll give people money for something very specific.
Yeah. That only my fans will get, and only because I'm making them do it. Good on him.
It's just the numbers, I guess. The name stays the same. I don't know what the significance of 88 is, though.
For him, yeah, I don't know. Because oftentimes we see a lot of these young whippersnappers, and they're doing it because of when they're born.
Yeah, I know.
William,
except for the babies born in 99.
Not born in 1988.
No, he's much younger than that.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it's because, William Nylander. Obviously, we all know him as Calgary native William Nylander. Maybe it's an homage to the Olympics.
Yeah, maybe, Carl. It's got to be what it is.
That's it. Well,
I'm sure what Nylander thinks every time he hits the ice is those 88 Olympics.
Man, I
gotta rep them somehow.
My home city of Calgary finally hosted the Olympics 8 years before I was born.
Sure, let's go with that.
He's such a nostalgic guy, that William. Nonetheless, do you want to talk expansion? Let's talk some history.
Yeah.
The news is done. Welcome to expansion. The year was 1967. The NHL had 6 teams. The Toronto Maple Leafs had just won a Stanley Cup. And then...
Sorry. I always think that part's funny.
And then the league doubled in size. Doubled, Nick!
It's pretty crazy, eh?
Can you imagine? I mean, so sure, we have the CFL in Canada. It has now a whopping 9 teams, I believe. They expanded and added 1. Can you imagine going from 6 to 12?
No, it's game-changing.
Yeah. So we went from the quote original six, which was obviously not the original six, but that's for another day. That's for the episode where we look at teams that are no longer in the NHL.
I like it.
However, 1967, the NHL went from Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Montreal, New York, and Toronto, adding the Los Angeles Kings, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, St. Louis Blues, and the now defunct California Seals and Minnesota North Stars.
I used to get quizzed on the 6 teams added to the NHL in 67, and I always forgot about the California Seals. That was the one team I could never remember.
That's a very fair thing to do. Yeah, the NHL, they lasted a very short time.
What did they last, like 2 seasons or something?
So they lasted a fair while before moving. They moved to Cleveland eventually. Hockey hotbed Cleveland, and by 1978 the team was done. They were disbanded. So a total of 11 seasons, 10 seasons. Yeah, 10 seasons.
Okay. I don't see Cleveland on here. I just see they went from being the California Seals to the Oakland Seals to the California Golden Seals.
Then they went to the Cleveland Barons.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it does say relocated to Cleveland here.
Yeah.
I can read.
They didn't they didn't disband, they merged, which is a weird thing. We'll get to some of that later.
Yeah.
2 of the teams, the Seals and the North Stars, merged and became the Cleveland Barons, no longer a thing. Anyways, NHL expansion, we are well-versed today in expansion drafts. And everyone gets very excited, right? Because especially Vegas came in, it was 1. Seattle came in, it was 1. A couple of years before that, we had Columbus and Minnesota, and we had 2 of them. Can you imagine an expansion draft? Because they did one. Oh, they did one, Nick.
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah. You can't just can you imagine trying to field a team just based on free agency and the entry draft?
Yeah.
It would be a disaster.
Just go.
In a non-cap era.
Right.
Here you make a team. Go.
And in non-traditional hockey markets.
Yeah.
Imagine having to recruit players to Missouri in 1967.
Yeah. Or I guess it's not as hard, but to jump in both the 2 teams in California in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
Here are the things of this draft that are interesting to me. So 1, they, in the NHL now, you get to pick teams or 1 player per team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work the same back then. There was only 6 teams to be choosing from. They managed every team. The expansion draft was 20 rounds long. With 6 teams, 120 players were selected in this expansion draft.
It's crazy.
Which, if you think about it that way, that's an entire roster just from the other 6 teams. To suddenly be here and to go to the Red Wings or the Avalanche or whoever, be like, hey, I'm taking 20 of your players next week. Deal with it. You got to make a lot of money for that.
Yeah, you'd have to. And if anyone else like me was wondering, that's a lot of players. I wonder if they also had an entry draft. They sure did.
Yeah.
And it looks like all the expansion teams picked first.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that intrigues me, for a 20-round draft, there is certainly going to be a lot of, players moving. They did just a straight draft. This was not a snake draft. So LA picked first.
Mm-hmm.
First round. They also picked first in the second round and the third round. I cannot see here, but because it was 1967 and there was much less information floating around about financials. But you got to think, how much more did the LA Kings pay than the California Seals to be yep, we're picking first and we get Terry Sawchuk. That's what we're doing.
They probably paid a lot.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah. It also looked like they were, there was rounds in the draft, but every player selected in the first 2 rounds were goaltenders, so it looked a little bit forced. All right, you're taking your goalies, and then you're taking everyone else.
Yeah, it could be. It's interesting. I think it's interesting that Terry Sawchuk gets expanded. I mean, he gets taken first, because you need a household name kind of to start off. You need a name that will draw people into a new team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
one player protected by the Toronto Maple Leafs in that expansion draft, Mr. Don Cherry, which is interesting choice there. The NHL really went through. What is happening? I thought my house was having problems.
I can't tell if you can hear that.
Yeah,
so
what is?
I live beside the hospitals in the city of Toronto, and there's the orange helicopters, which are the emergency helicopters that fly in emergencies from all over the province. They land like right across the street from me.
I was going to say, in your house, in your recording studio right now.
Yeah, normally I can see them, but they literally land across the street. It's pretty crazy.
That is, yeah.
Anyways, welcome to my home.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of things. Just all the sounds are happening today.
It's fun sleeping here.
Yeah, I bet. The NHL, so they expanded the first expansion in 1967, brought them up to 12 teams, and they really went through two different batches of expansion. I guess 4? I said 2, and now I'm immediately switching to 4. They went, the 70s was real hot and heavy, right? Then they merged with the WHA.
Yeah.
And that is something for another show.
That's a big topic.
There's a lot to get into.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover just in the middle of expansion. So we'll do that one. We'll do that one in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Well,
I'm excited for that one because I really like that story.
Yeah. So we've got that, and then we've got the 90s. And I'll include the Wild and Blue Jackets in 2000 in that, because then we went 17 years between that and Vegas, and now Seattle. So those are what I'm calling 4 eras, right? We've got, I guess, 5 if we can. No, we'll include the initial 6 in that 70s.
Yeah.
We've got the 90s.
7 and 79.
And we've got the modern day expansion.
Yeah.
So a lot of what happened in the 70s was a lot of like going to new markets, which I guess it all is. But when you go from 12 teams up to there, we started to see some teams showing up in places that today are just teams that have existed for forever, right? Like the teams I just listed, right? Like the LA Kings, St. Louis Blues, Penguins, Flyers. Like these are teams and rivalries, right? Penguins, Flyers. Finally showing up in 1967. Well, we saw Buffalo and Vancouver show up in 1970. Again, big teams that now are just taken for granted.
Yeah, they're just part of they've been around forever, right? Part of the NHL that when I was born, they were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I always remember them.
Yeah. We've got in 72 the Islanders and the Atlanta Flames, a trend that we will see as we go through. Atlanta somehow keeps getting teams.
Keep trying.
Yeah.
You never know what'll happen.
It's impossible to know. One thing that I do want to give full credit and due to, a lot of what I'm using for my resources here comes to us courtesy of a friend of the show and writer for our website, Mike Laybourne. He did a ton of stuff, actually leading up to the Vegas expansion. He did a ton. He went back and looked at every single expansion team ever and how they did. So if you want more, like we're not going to be able to cover more, head to the website and there's a ton there. And he dives into that. So thank you.
If you use a search bar at the top and just search expansion, they'll all come up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike, for keeping Carl informed and helping him through this show.
Thank you for the heads up on that. But it is, so we've now added Atlanta, which even at the time, like it is interesting. Obviously, these teams had to buy into the NHL, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was no need for that. Or sorry, you didn't just get in for free. And so these were all markets that had people who were willing to spend the money. But even then, Atlanta, not really a hockey market.
No. And I have a thought on that, but I'd like to finish the 74 before I go into it.
Okay.
On the idea of going into a non-traditional market. Because 1974, there was another expansion and another 2 teams.
Okay.
The Washington Capitals
Heard of them.
Which, yeah, like the Buffalo Sabres are just part of the NHL that we know.
Yeah.
And the Kansas City Scouts.
I think everyone's a big. I'm a big scouter.
Yeah, is that what they called themselves back then? Was the fan club the Scouters?
No one showed up to games, so there was no one.
So what I thought was interesting, looking at the 70s, is each expansion in the 70s, they were all 2 years apart, brought 2 new teams into the league. Now the league back then was, until at least 67, very Eastern focused, right? The original 6 are all East. And then now through the 70s, I think it's interesting. They add kind of one safe, kind of sure bet in, a big metropolitan city on the East Coast, a little north where they know hockey will succeed. And they add one that, I guess maybe it's just hindsight now, but they're kind of long shots, right? Kansas City, Atlanta. At least now we know that they didn't survive. We know they were a bit of a long shot back then. Maybe they didn't feel that at the time. I also think that, Vancouver probably slots into that category as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and you have, this is how you talk about the fact that they're, trying to add these Western teams. In 1967, they still had 2 divisions in the league, an East and a West. The Western Division consisted of teams such as the Philadelphia Flyers and Pittsburgh Penguins.
Right.
Can you imagine that travel? Like people, like the Jets complained when they were in the same division as Florida. Rightfully so. The Penguins have the Kings and Oakland in their division. Jeez Louise.
That would be pretty brutal travel for the 60s.
Yeah, right?
Like they would have flown back then, right?
Oh, yeah, you would have to. It would be, if you have the Penguins, they would literally just like start the season. You do those just like, they'd play like a 3-game series against the Kings and Seals and then go back home. That would be the only way you could do it.
Yeah, they'd have to. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
Anyways, so yeah, no, it is. You're very right. In adding, even the Canucks, right? A team in a Canadian market, which obviously there's a lot of Canadian teams. It is interesting that was the first Canadian team added, though.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That is pretty interesting. And actually, the inclusion of Canadian, or the expansion of Canadian teams into the league is pretty interesting as well. And a lot of that comes from the WHA merger.
Yeah.
Too, right? Like we didn't see another Canadian team come into the league until the WHA merger, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, because then that's when we got the Oilers in there.
Yeah.
And then, we added, the Flames were a move. The Jets were a move. I guess this version of the Jets were a move.
Yeah, but the Jets did originally come in with the WHA.
Even with the WHA, yeah. And then Ottawa was an expansion.
So it's kind of interesting, especially with the bulk of the players coming from Canada.
Yeah, that the NHL never really thought to expand there.
Well, the money probably wasn't there. The money's still probably not. Well, I don't know.
If the money was there, they would have gone to Quebec instead of Seattle.
Yeah,
right. Like
that is true.
There's people who want there are people who want a team there, but there's just not enough money to make it happen.
Yeah, true enough.
Well,
so that was the 70s.
That was the 70s. Yeah, we got, and the 70s were capped off with the aforementioned WHA edition, which, like, again, it gets weird, it gets fun. We will talk about all of that in a maybe even next week, since it's right on the heels of this. We won't, no promises, but
yeah,
why not?
Why not?
Why not? So we'll get into the WHA merger probably next week. And then the NHL was like, all right, we're done, right? By 1979, the NHL had ballooned, and they were now sitting with a much more than the original 6 teams. They had a whopping, 20 teams? They now had 2 conferences. This is when we're in the realm of the Patrick, the Smythe, the Adams, and the Norris divisions. 21 teams in the league by this point in time.
Getting bigger. It's a lot based from the original 6 to now.
I mean, and sure, you added, 4 in one bunch and 6 in another, but you're now sitting at 15 more teams than you were 13 years before, which seems like unsustainable growth. Like if any business was going to say like, all right, we're going to start opening franchises. I've got 6 franchises. Maybe that's not that big of an issue. It just seems like something where now that would be crazy.
Yeah, it does feel like it now, but I think there's like an established league now. Plus, I was going to save this for the end to talk about, but like how big realistically can the league go? Like I think it makes sense going from 6 to 20, and expansion kind of has this boom, but then, it gets to be big enough that it's hard to maintain, it's hard to contain, and it's hard for fans and people to follow, I think.
Yeah, I think 32. No league in North America has more than 30, right? The NFL has 32 teams. NBA has 30. Baseball has 30.
Yeah.
Hockey will have 32. 32 seems like a good number to stop. I mean, 30 seems like a good number to stop too. But like really 32.
It has to be even. It has to be an even number.
Got to be an even number. It has to be, I like it when it's divisible by 4 if you're doing 4 divisions, right? Splitting it up like that. So you can have, either 8 divisions of 4 like you have in the NFL or 4 divisions of 8 like the NHL is going to have. It just, the cleanliness of it brings me to it.
I agree. I think 32 is a good number, but you still hear people talking about, other cities that could easily have an NHL team. Things like Quebec City and Kansas City and Houston.
Some of those, the Texas cities. You've got Atlanta probably wants another team again.
Okay, look, we got to cut off Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta, you're done.
There's only
the 2-team maximum.
Yeah, you can only try so many times.
We're not allowed to overserve you NHL teams. It's
no.
against the law.
It's irresponsible.
Yeah. So 1991 hit, and the NHL, after doing nothing for quite some time, had another interesting one, because this was the time that the San Jose Sharks showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Sharks, Minnesota existed before, and they had both like an expansion draft and a dispersal draft.
Oh, that's interesting. What's a dispersal draft?
So a dispersal draft is if a team just stops existing. So the North Stars wanted to move and to San Jose. So instead of instead of expanding to San Jose, they wanted to move to San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And so what his plan was he would sell the team, move it to San Jose, and that's what happened. Instead, the way that it works was that the owner of the North Stars bought the Sharks and then sold the North Stars to someone else, which is interesting.
Okay. So were the Sharks already in with the NHL before he bought them?
No.
Okay. Interesting.
He essentially, for $50 million, he created the San Jose Sharks, which is huge, a big number for back then.
Yeah.
This was the same number where even later on into the 90s, not that much later, but a few years later, it was still sitting at $50 million. So $50 million, and he sold the North Stars for 31.
Ooh.
So taking a hit there, but he knew that, right? He's like, okay, I'm going to make more money off this Sharks team. This Sharks team's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so then the way that it worked was the North Stars were now a different team, right?
Yeah.
So they did a dispersal draft. The North Stars had to have some players, and some of them were then taken from the Sharks and taken from the North Stars and moved to the Sharks. It's all very confusing, but that's what happened.
Okay.
So a bunch of them. And for some reason, for a reason that I cannot fathom, it must have been that was their that was it. That was their AHL team. Turns out the Kalamazoo Wings must have been an affiliate of the North Stars, because most of these players came from them. Nonetheless, then you had an actual expansion draft where the North Stars and the Sharks both got to pick players. All this to being said, it was a rough time in Minnesota.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say about the the Minnesota situation. I mean, they got Guy Lafleur.
They did. Good for them.
I think what was interesting about the San Jose piece, if we go back there for a minute, is the owners that you talked about paying $50 million for that franchise. So in 67, we saw the NHL expand to Oakland with the Seals, right? The Golden Seals.
They moved there. Oh yeah, to Oakland. Sorry, yeah, to Oakland.
Yeah, in 67. And then they left Oakland and went to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And then the NHL went back. You know, Oakland and San Jose aren't the same place, obviously, but they're close. Right. So they went back to the area to open another franchise. The owners who bought the Sharks are the same owners who owned the Oakland Seals and the Cleveland Barons.
And who left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these guys obviously had a long-term desire to make hockey sustainable in that part of California.
Yeah.
And they eventually succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. I mean, the Sharks have been very successful. The Gunn family has been a huge part of hockey history now with
Yeah.
You know, owning multiple teams and what they've done in California. Big time work there.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And the Sharks were pretty good pretty fast, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they hit the ground running. So their first season, right? The expansion draft was what, 1991? So their first season would have been 91, 92.
Mm-hmm.
And in that season, not so good. Minnesota made the playoffs, actually, after their hot mess. But by the mid 90s, San Jose started to turn around. I do believe that the record. I know you said I'm gonna contradict you here a little bit. You said that they started well. I believe the record for the least wins ever came from the early 90s San Jose Sharks.
Okay, so the first few years there?
The first years of the struggle. There was one season, they went 11, 71, and 2.
Oh, that's bad.
And yet, George Gunn was like, I want a piece of that. Give me that. Their third season, however, they were in the playoffs. So, they managed to turn it around. They got a few players that you might recognize. A guy, Igor Larionov, might have heard of him.
I'm familiar, very familiar.
Sanis Ojelinch, you might have heard of him as well.
I remember.
And a goaltender by the name of Arturs Urbe.
I do remember his goalie mask.
Yeah, that is, I believe, around these circles, we call him player coach Arturs Urbe.
Yes. Yes.
That is his title. So, San Jose did manage to turn around and has been, I would say, for some time, like just a consistently good NHL team, even through the 90s into the 2000s. Nothing to be ashamed of there.
Yeah. They also, just one fun thing, they drafted in the expansion draft a guy by the name of Greg Kozlowski, which I think is pretty close to Pavelski.
That's true. Yep.
Just a little, what they call it in the movies, foreshadowing there.
Yeah, Joe Pavelski. I mean, have you ever seen them in the same room? I haven't.
Nope.
So
I certainly haven't.
No.
I haven't even seen the first guy.
It's true. Yeah. Well, I have. I have seen. I've never seen Poznovsky in the room or not. No.
Yeah. No. Me neither.
Now I'm going to be scouring all of these to see what other foreshadowing we get. We move on. Tampa Bay Lightning, Ottawa Senators, two teams with slightly different histories. One team's won a Stanley Cup, and the other is the Ottawa Senators. They came in 92, and something we'll see throughout is omission from expansion draft. San Jose, they weren't allowed to just pilfer them immediately after. They decided to let them get their feet for a little bit, which seems nice.
That's pretty consistent, though, even into the modern drafts, too.
Exactly, yeah. Because I do believe we'll get to it, but I think Nashville was exempt from the Columbus, Minnesota one.
Yeah.
Well, so Ottawa and St. Louis, nope, not St. Louis. I have zero idea why I just said St. Louis. Tampa and Ottawa coming in 1992 and 92, 93 being their first seasons. And we now have another team back in Canada.
Yep. The last team, right?
This was the last expansion team in Canada, yeah.
The NHL finally started to see the potential of Canada.
They finally thought, you know what, this little upstart little thing called Ontario, maybe that place could use a second team. A little foreshadowing, Ottawa selected John Van Kessel. So
yeah.
we knew, foreshadowing, that Phil Kessel was going to end up in the province of Ontario, obviously.
The Lightning also selected Frederic Chabot.
Ooh.
So we knew that his grandson, Thomas Chabot, was going to end up for the other team in that expansion draft.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that is what would happen, and it did. So that brings us to the third year in a row of extension. The NHL they were going crazy. 6 teams in 3 years. We thought it was bad. I mean, to go from 6 to 12, that's a lot, but at this point in time, they're just throwing teams everywhere. 1993 is where I guess 5 teams. 5 teams in 3 years. The foray into the state of Florida is well underway. And this time they add the Florida Panthers and a team we all love, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim.
Yeah, they saw that sweet, sweet Disney money.
I thought you were just going to say movie. And yes, they did. They saw the sweet, sweet Disney movie and made it happen.
And the cartoon.
Yeah.
The cartoon played a big role in their look and feel back in those days.
I love the fact that this was a team fully branded on a movie. Like, only the 90s could do this, right? Because this was the time that got us the Toronto Raptors after Jurassic Park came out.
Yes, that's right.
What movie, I guess now it would just be like Marvel movies, essentially, right?
Yeah.
If you were to take a team and name them after a movie, what would you pick? What movie out there should be sports teamified?
Oh, boy.
We've got all summer to figure out this answer. You do not need to answer it in the next, 5 minutes.
I don't know. I guess you could just straight up name a team the Avengers.
Yeah, that would be an expensive one. Can you imagine?
Seattle Avengers.
The Seattle Avengers. Yeah. I don't think any of the movies took place in Seattle. But the Mighty Ducks movie didn't have anything to do with Anaheim either, did it? Did it take place? It didn't.
No, it was in Minnesota.
Yeah. And they were just like, well, Disneyland's here.
Yeah.
So let's
we want another California team. Just throw them down there.
Yeah. Well, that's what we got. And obviously, big things happened there. 1998 saw the Nashville Predators join the league with the addition of David Poile. And I think that's the biggest thing that Nashville had going for them. It's the fact that David Poile quickly became the longest tenured NHL general manager.
Was he the GM in the expansion year?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. He has been with that team ever since.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. It is very impressive.
So he drafted that team and built it, and it took him basically 19 years to get to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah. And they didn't fire him.
And they never fired him.
Yeah.
It must be harder, though, at that point, because I don't know. I guess the relationship and the loyalty runs so much deeper than it's just like a job, because you help really build the team from the ground up.
Yeah.
He must feel almost just as much like an owner.
Oh, absolutely.
Team.
Yeah. Well, and now he's like president of hockey ops. He's the GM. He's everything there. He is the Nashville Predators.
And he loves to trade players.
He has, I mean, as much loyalty as he has to the team, he has zero loyalty to his players. I don't foresee any foreshadowing in this expansion draft, though.
Well, one fun fact.
Oh, hit me.
Frederic Chabot, grandfather of Thomas Chabot, was the first player drafted in this draft.
Get out.
He was.
Is that has to be now? I mean, I'm gonna.
He wasn't. Okay, sorry, he wasn't drafted first, but he was drafted in that expansion draft again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in a one team expansion draft, order is irrelevant, right? Now I need to do some research and find out if anyone else has been selected twice in an expansion draft.
Also, who is Frederic Chabot? Like, I'm looking this guy up because was he that good that everybody wanted him always?
But also nobody wanted him. That's the thing. The team that has him wants nothing to do with him, and everyone else is like, "Oh yeah, give me some of Freddie."
This is crazy, Carl. He had in his entire NHL career, he played for five years in the NHL, 32 games.
Jeez, and was selected twice in expansion draft.
Selected twice in expansion draft.
Okay,
32 game starts.
I've done the necessary research, Nick. He is the only player other than one other to be selected in multiple expansion drafts. The other one, Darren Poopa.
I was Poopa?
Poopa. He was selected by Florida in their expansion draft.
Yeah.
From Anaheim. No, not from Anaheim. They were the same year. From Toronto. Who picked him the first time? We'll figure this out. Darren Poopa, the only other one. So we got Nashville. We've got Atlanta gets another team. Another kick at the old can.
That was the intonation in your voice there was just like you were bitter about that.
That was an organization that was a hot mess from like day one.
It really was. Their whole first season was just a mess. If you hear some of the stories that those players tell about that year, it was just chaos.
Yeah. And then like you've got can you imagine you start a team, you're trying to set up well, and you select who is it that they picked? Who was that flop of a first round pick they had?
In the expansion draft?
No, in the draft. Who's that guy that they took first overall who was a wreck?
Oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue.
It starts with, there's an S in there. This is how bad he was. No one cares.
Was it Shane something?
Patrick Steffen. That's it.
Steffen. Yeah.
Patrick Steffen. Yeah. That's what they got to start with, was that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a rough start for them. Yeah. And they even if you look at their expansion team, there's no names that
no one to get excited about.
Nobody to get excited about.
There's not even anyone to foreshadow. Like nothing. So
yeah, I think they have the wrong Ferraro listed here on Wikipedia.
Oh.
Because I'm pretty sure Ray Ferraro was taken by the Atlanta Thrashers, but they have Peter Ferraro listed.
Maybe they both played for the.
It's possible. Yeah, I guess it's possible he went in free agency.
I mean, I think Ray obviously wants to make his way to the hotbed of hockey that is Atlanta.
It was hot there, that's for sure.
It was very sweaty. Yeah, the ice quality certainly did not help them.
No.
This second, the fast and furious addition of teams in the NHL ended in 2000 with the addition of Columbus and Minnesota again. Another Minnesota team coming in. And this one was, kind of, these two teams took very different paths. Columbus took forever to be good, and Minnesota relatively, again, like in the same way that San Jose was good by like year 3 or 4, Minnesota was fairly good fairly quickly.
Minnesota was, yeah. Sorry, I have to interrupt this thought because I found another player who was drafted twice.
Oh.
In 1999, taken by the...
Shut up! Frederic Chabot was taken by Columbus!
No way.
I'm sorry to interrupt your thought.
Oh my God, you're right.
He was taken 3 times.
What? He didn't play a game for Columbus.
Sorry. I'm very sorry. You had something very important to share. I railroaded it.
That's
taken twice.
That's crazy. Sorry. Jamie Pusher was taken in 1999 by the Thrashers, and he was taken again in 2000.
Oh, there we go.
By the Jackets.
Did he ever play more games? Did he have a more successful career than Freddie?
Jamie Pusher? I feel like he did because it's a name I recognize.
Okay.
So I hope so. He played 10 years.
Red Wings. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a Red Wing. I think he was a defenseman, if I remember. Yep. Man. So that's probably why I know that name, because I probably played with him on Sega.
I thought you meant like, I don't know, these guys, maybe he played like beer league with you.
No.
There was some fairly, goalies were another thing that went right. Goalies always going everywhere. Older goalies in these drafts went off the board very quickly. And some guys, Dwayne Rollison went on to have a very good career with a number of teams. He was selected by Columbus in this draft. Some long-term, I remember Matthew Schneider, as a big piece of that. Someone actually, here's another throwback. You joked that we talk about it this week. I figured out who the Buffalo Sabre was, who I thought. Jeff Sanderson, selected by the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Carl texted me like 5 days after we recorded. I remembered finally.
Yeah. Who is Jeff Courtnall is not the Buffalo Sabre that I thought he was. Jeff Sanderson is the Buffalo Sabre that I was thinking of, and he was selected by the Columbus Blue Jackets.
I had like completely wiped that from my memory that was a thing. Poor Carl's been thinking about it all week.
I had to look it up. Like I literally went. This was a very intentional thing. I went and looked at Buffalo Sabres rosters from I think it was probably 2000. It must have been before 2000. But yeah. Jeff Sanderson.
There you go. Hardcore hockey history on Jeff Sanderson.
Hardcore hockey history. Jeff Sanderson, Frederic Chabot. This is all we have. That was actually Frederic Chabot never played again in the NHL after being selected in this draft. So, unfortunately, he did go on to a great career with the Houston Aeros, and then he went to Germany.
Oh, he had some good numbers in the IHL too.
Yeah,
because he never had these numbers in the AHL.
I mean, he played 72 games one season.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
That's pretty intense. The IHL was weird though.
Yeah. And then that brings us to last year. Vegas. We remember Vegas.
Yeah, we know how that went down.
Everyone made all the trades and gave them all the players, made them really good for a season, and then they got into cap chaos.
I still maintain that that's a good thing, and that's how the expansion draft should go.
I do not. I'm not sad about it in the slightest.
We do not want these teams to take 10 years to become playoff teams.
No, I'm very okay with it.
Yeah.
And really, when you think about it, no team suffered, right? Like they somehow managed to be good, and no team is sitting there like, man, everything that they got screwed on was self-inflicted.
Yes.
It was all like, oh yeah, I decided that I wanted to package William Karlsson and David Clarkson's contract for some unknown reason.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if GMs have learned their lesson next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
maybe don't make that trade.
But we literally just saw Toronto trade a first-round pick with Patrick Marleau. Like they're going to be willing to dump things onto Seattle to kickstart them.
Yeah, true. It'll be really interesting to see who Seattle hires as their general manager.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you? I've learned a lot. I've learned about Frederic Chabot, learned about Jeff Sanderson, I've learned about the chaos of the Minnesota North Stars.
Yeah.
And how they like went from being a team to not a team to merging with a team, and now they're a team again in the Minnesota Wild.
I think that it's interesting that the NHL, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, NHL expansion has been successful. They put teams where they want to put them, and they are committed to them, and they stick with them.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Like, we do not see a lot of. I mean, Atlanta moved twice, obviously, and that's something we knew of already. We've got, but like Florida, Gary Bettman's committed. He's going to make that happen.
Yep.
But then also, like, because we can rip on the Panthers, but the Lightning are an incredibly successful organization.
Yeah.
And that's just down the road. So,
yeah, they have successfully built hockey markets where there previously were none.
Yeah. So good on them for that. That's a thing that you should do.
Yeah.
So you grow it. I mean, you're not going to be able to like grow to 32 teams by just staying in Canada. That's not going to happen.
No.
And like the northeast of the northeastern United States. So
no, they had ambition, they chased it, and they've stuck with it. And in more cases than not, it's been a success.
It has been.
So good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk. Maybe we'll discuss more. Probably in 5 days, I'll remember something else about Frederic Chabot. I'll text Nick about it, and then we'll make a plan for next week's topic. But WHA might be it. We got a lot of great suggestions on the Twitter for ideas. This actually came in. I think it came in from friend of the show, Joe. Gave this idea as one. We were like, yeah, expansion sounds fun. Let's talk that.
Yeah.
Especially with it coming up again in a couple of years. Everyone's always thinking towards Seattle. Always. Like, literally everyone is always thinking towards Seattle. So, have to do it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And if people have time, I suggest digging into it a little deeper because the expansion draft rules and philosophies are really, really interesting.
You can get lost for forever.
Yeah.
Like it is a very in-depth thing. If you want to know more about, other things in history, we've obviously been focusing on the hardcore hockey history. But if you head to letsfindoutpodcast.com, you can find out about Edmonton's history. There might, I'm taking a quick look. It's a monthly podcast. And it's actually, here's what's cool about it. It's hosted by former history laureate of Edmonton. And so he talks about the history of the city. I do not see an episode on the WHA merger or the creation of the Edmonton Oilers, but lots of other great things in there and lots of great stories being told there. So head to letsfindoutpodcast.com, another fantastic show in the Alberta Podcast Network. They are an award-winning show hosted by Chris Chang Yen Phillips. Head on over to there, check them out. You will not, if you want more history, everyone loves their history shows. Head on over and check them out. You can head to the fourthlinepodcast.com where you can find out more about us. You want to see Mike Laybourne's expansion articles from back in 2018? Type in expanding into our search bar at the top, like Nick said. You'll find that.
Expansion.
I did expanding because they're actually the series he did. He called Expanding the NHL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So find those. Those will be there. You can find lots of other great articles and great podcasts. You can find all the places to find us, Spotify, iTunes. If you're not already subscribed, if you just found us, subscribe. We strongly recommend it. I subscribe.
Of course I do.
Yeah. So do that. We'll be coming out every week over the summer talking about another part of history, which, this is week 2. I'm enjoying it.
It's a lot of fun. Learning is fun, Carl.
It is. So join us on our journey of learning and let us know some things that you've learned. Maybe you dove a little deeper or in a different direction than us. Maybe you know the relationship between Frederic and Thomas Chabot. And you can tell us about that because there's probably something.
If you do, we want you on the show next week. Yeah. I have questions.
A lot.
And if you could put us in touch with Frederic, got questions for him too.
I'm sure he's available. Let's be honest.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, he's not coming on now. That's for sure. Here's a fun fact. Going on his Wikipedia page to see where he is. He's no longer with the Edmonton Oilers. He was a goalie coach with the Oilers.
Oh.
Frederic is actually his 5th name.
What?
Joseph Leopold Louis Marie Frederic Chabot.
Wow.
That's a William Nylander-like name.
At least he had a choice, right?
Yeah. And he settled on Frederic.
Frederic. Well,
good for him.
To each his own.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week looking at something else and any news that happens in the league. We'll keep you up to date on what happens in the NHL this summer as well.
It's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. NHL expansion will not stop. And when in doubt, just pick Frederic Chabot.